Here we are to continue with our discussion of programming with JavaScript and object-oriented programming and inheritance. So in the last episode, we talked about inheriting from other classes and creating a superclass and extending classes so they can share properties and methods from your superclass, right? And the challenge for you in the last one, after we created the sprite class, was to use the sprite class to extend the ball class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that here. I'm going to say extends sprite. And then what we'll do is we will say super, and we'll pass in the x, y, width, height, and color. And then these three properties are no longer needed, so we can delete those, right? The draw method right here is, unique to the ball class because it draws a circle rather than a rectangle. So we have to leave this here, okay? So what's happening here with render is it's going to override the render method in the superclass. Okay, so that's what you'd say there, right? You'd say, hey, we're overriding the method. So in other words, the child class ball shares a method that exists in the superclass. So since this has the same name, JavaScript will use this method, right? In the case of the brick class, there is no render method, so JavaScript says, hey, you know what? I can't find the render method here when you call it, so I look for it in the superclass, right, or the class that we extend. Okay, so we got that. Let's also use let's actually kind of close these guys up here. Oh, you know what? I didn't include a width and a height here for these guys. So either we can leave these blank. Maybe, actually, that's a really good question. Does the ball have a width and a height? Actually, you know what I'm going to say is, maybe the width is really the radius times 2, and the height is the radius times 2, right? Kind of makes sense, right? The ball, I don't know, right? So maybe that'll work, right? So let's see. So we'll do that. And then, oh, good, everything's still working except for that mouse move. We're going to fix that too later. So we got all these things working. We also added a move method, right? And our sprite class has a move by and a move to. So actually now the ball has a move by and a move to, right? So in a lot of ways, this move by method right here could be used in place of the move method, right? And that way this code right here wouldn't need to be duplicated, right? Even though this isn't exactly the same, it actually does what's happening here. So maybe, maybe the move method could look like this. We could say this dot move by. Actually, what's great is VS Code sees these methods in our superclass, so it code hints me that they exist there, right? So we'll say move by this dot dx, this dot dy, right? And so if we pass our dx and dy in when we get to sprite, move by will add them to the x and the y. So maybe that kind of removes a little bit of redundant code. We'll take a quick look here. Oh, it still seems to be working, right? So that's great. So let's also extend our game label class. So I'm going to go into game label here, and let me fix these spaces here. And so that looks pretty good. So maybe we'll also extend game label. I always like to have a label in there, right? So we'll do that. And maybe we'll say extends sprite. We'll call super. And we'll pass in the x and the y And then here's a little weird. It's hard for us to calculate the width and height of the text because we don't know how big it's going to be. So maybe our game label just will have to have a width and a height of 0. Okay, that won't actually affect the way that it renders, right? It'll just be if we ask for those properties, they'll end up being 0. Okay, so I'll pass those in, and then that means this X and Y and color properties can go away because they're handled by the superclass. But the game label has these 3 properties here, right? And then it renders itself special, so we'll override the render method by including the render method here. So we'll save that, and then this guy can use the X and Y from sprite. And then we'll take a quick look. Oh yeah, and then the color, I must not have passed the color in, right? So I passed color here, but actually I got the color here. That maybe tells us that there's a problem, right? Because I didn't actually pass the value in because it got the red, right? So let's go take a look at game. And we made a game label. Oh yeah, I didn't include the color, right? So if I want to include the color here, we'll do this dot color. Let's see if that fixed it, right? No, so something's wrong. Well, I'll leave that for you guys to solve, but essentially our game label right here, like if let's try this, right? If I say new game label and I hit return, you can see VS Code is hinting me the parameters for game label. So it takes text, X, Y, color, and then font, right? So it should be string, X, Y, color, and then the font would be another parameter. So this dot color, I must have made a mistake, and that doesn't exist, right? Let's take a look here. Oh, because I called it object color, right? So maybe just spelling error, right? You know, and there we go. Let's take a look, right? So, oh yeah, and then that one's fixed. So if I did the same thing for lives, then that would fix that one. Okay, so I'll leave this for you guys to think about. And your challenge here is to think of other ways you can extend some of these classes to move properties so that they're not duplicated everywhere. Okay, and then the more we do that, the more our code will be modular, where we can share it. So we can build new things from the sprite class, and then we know that sprite class always has can always position itself on the screen with an X and Y, set its width and height, and its color. So it can always draw itself as a rectangle. And then if we have other ways to use those rectangles or draw them in different ways or give them other properties like a status, then we can add that, right? But any object that needs these properties can just be a sprite, okay? And then if it needs a move by or move to method, we have that here. And if you think of another method that maybe all sprites can share, then we can add that here. Maybe we could have a method that's isVisible. It's kind of like the status in the brick. So if we had that on all of our sprites, then maybe the brick could just be a sprite and we could eliminate that class, right? But it comes a point when if we add too many things to this class, then it starts to become either, too heavy, like it's got a lot of stuff that it does, or it becomes too specialized because it has a bunch of features that no one uses, right? So this is where we can maybe find a balance where we think of all the properties that are generic enough that everybody should share them, put them in here, and then we know where to edit them. And anytime we want to make a new object, we can always have those features. Okay. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope that that's interesting. And then in the next step, what we'll do is we're gonna bundle our code, right, and use a processor to process the code into code that's compatible with older browsers and things like that. Okay. So thanks for watching.